Hi there, I'm Sipka, and this is the Apatros review. Now, as we count down the minutes before 2022 comes around, and due to time constraints, I'm going to have to do my last review for 2021 in 2022, like a few hours from now. So, just so you know. Anyway, and in this episode, we take a look at this: Day of the Dead, not the George Romero original, which is actually one of my favorite movies. This is the remake, actually the first remake. The film was actually remade twice as in films, and I'll review the second remake sometime next year, as in like the year that's coming up, in like in a little over half an hour, and a TV show which came out in 2021. Interesting. Now, this film was actually directed by Steve Miner. It's actually an American-Bulgarian co-production, and it was direct-to-video. It came out in the US on the 8th of April 2008, and then in the UK on the 1st of September 2008. I don't know the date when it came out in Australia. It was directed by Steve Miner, who is known for his slasher films, I mean the 80s, and also doing Halloween H2O and the cult classic Warlock. And it was written by Jeffrey Reddick, and produced by Boaz Davidson and James Glenn Doodleson, Randall Emmett, George Filler, and M. Del Walton III. This film was actually made by a company named Millennium Films, which is the company that created a whole heap of bad direct-to-video Jean-Claude Van Damme and Steven Seagal films during the 2000s. In fact, there was a time, which was pretty much the 2000s, when all the bad action movies were coming out of Eastern Europe. Now, and as for the DVD, this is actually an Australian DVD from Force Entertainment. I'll explain about the DVD later on, but I should point out that it's 185 wide, English 5.1 of 448 kilobyte range, no subtitles, and there's only preview trailers. Now, before I start this burn job of a review on this unholy remake of the awesome original film, let me just say that I am a devoted fan of the original 1985 George Romero classic zombie film. In fact, it is one of my favorite films, alongside Beyond. Now, the original film was a haunting look at the slow death of the human race, and technically the last film in the series story-wise. But you see, the second trilogy, Land of the Dead, Diary of the Dead, Survival of the Dead, actually takes place before Day of the Dead, according to Romero himself. Now, I first heard about this remake back in 2007, when I read a short article in an entertainment magazine while shopping in a supermarket. I was kind of excited, given that the remakes of Night of the Living Dead in 1990 and Dawn of the Dead in 2004 were good films and decent remakes. Not quite as good as the originals, but they were still decent films. And actually, Dawn of the Dead remake was one of the films that actually started the post-millennial zombie boom. Now, but I was expecting a big-budget theatrical release, not some slick but grubby-looking direct-to-video B film shot in the dregs of Eastern Europe, where all the bad B-grade action films came from during the 2000s, particularly those awful Steven Seagal flicks I kept reviewing over the past 3 years. When I first saw this, I was shocked at how bad the film was, but at least I thought it was entertaining in a so bad it's good kind of way. Now seeing it again a good 13 years after its direct-to-video release, I find it to be just plain atrocious. I've seen a lot of bad zombie films in my time. This film is nothing like the original. Instead, it's just a forgettable story about a group of soldiers and civilians trapped in a small Colorado town under military quarantine, where a flu-like virus, the result of a military biological weapon gone loose. Does this remind you of anything? Which was developed in the local secret base, has infected most of the town, turning them into fast-moving zombies with a customary taste for human flesh. Now, to help get the message across why I think this film is so awful, let me detail some of the many logic goods present in the film. I won't go into why the film is called Day of the Dead when it takes place entirely at night. Too easy a criticism to make that it might be somewhat redundant. So, logic control, here are the facts. 1. When this film was released, the US Army had replaced their green camouflage uniforms with a pixel grey design known as the Army Combat Uniform, or ACU. Even taking into account the assumption that the unit depicted here in the film was one of the last to be supplied ACUs, they still end up wearing the old uniforms wrong. Unit patch should be on the left shoulder and the American flag on the right shoulder. 2. Sarah Cross, like the main character played by Mina Savari, although she's listed in the credits as Sarah Bowman, this is actually something I've noticed in a couple of films where characters are named Cross, surname Cross, end up having their surnames changed in the credits for some reason. I don't know why. the last time I saw this was Perfect Assassins, aka Breed Apart, which I reviewed like a couple years ago. Anyway, as for Sarah Cross, aka Sarah Bowman, played by Mina Savari, her pistol fires 23 shots, and she's like using a typical military M9 Beretta, like the military version. That has like a 15 round capacity, but she fires it 23 times before running dry, and the pistol sounds like it's suppressed, even though there's no suppressor fitted. Now, number 3. The radio station's frequency is listed with a comma as a decimal point instead of a period. You see, in America and here in Australia, we use the full stop, the period, the little dot on the sentence, as a decimal point. But because the film was shot in Eastern Europe, you know, they use commas as decimal points, so that's something that shows you, it clues you in that it was shot in Eastern Europe, not Colorado. Now, 4. Bud was never given a pistol before he became a zombie, so where did he get that gun? And you'll notice he has the gun when he sacrifices himself at the end of towards the end of the film to save his friends. And let me put Bub in the original Day of the Dead was one of the coolest zombies ever. He was like a really good zombie. In fact, he actually took down Captain Rhodes in the original, shot him, and basically let his zombie friends eat the guy alive. Here, Bud, actually they changed the name from Bub to Bud. It looks just a regular soldier just happens to get infected, and they actually put bleach on his wound, so maybe that delayed the destruction of his brain or something, I don't know. Anyway, and he's actually a vegetarian, like as a human, and becomes a zombie, so he kept his vegetarianism. Although, come to think of it, they were going for the forest, so why didn't he start eating the plants and trees around? Anyway, number 5. Captain Rhodes' uniform in this film has the incorrect details on labels. I won't go into that, but if you're a military expert, you'll notice that. And actually, Captain Rhodes in this film is just pretty much a blank of a character played by Ving Rhames, who was the cop in Dawn of the Dead, the remake. Now, number 6. A real modest gun shop in a small Colorado town will not have so many of what is referred to as Class 3 automatic weapons in its arsenal. You see, the characters actually are at a gun store and they get submachine guns, assault rifles, like all automatic weapons. But to be honest, in real life, they wouldn't. Gun stores that caliber wouldn't exactly have that many automatic weapons. I mean, because the Class 3 weapons are actually regulated, you know, American gun laws. And number 7, the radio sets in military Humvees cannot pick up local radio stations, because actually, when they're driving across the main street, and Savari actually hears that her brother is locked in, and his girlfriend have locked themselves in the local radio station. And they only hear this because apparently the transmission actually comes up on the military Humvees she's driving the radio. Even though those radio sets cannot pick up local radio stations. Somebody once said this movie could have used a technical advisor. Yeah. I could go on, but these ones are sufficient enough to make my case. Now, the film does have one extra problem that wasn't apparent at the time it was made, but which becomes obvious these days during an actual pandemic involving a biological weapon. If this virus was spreading through the town, then everybody should have been infected and become a zombie. But the idea that some of the cast, like the main cast, are naturally immune doesn't work in this scenario. Since this was an entirely new virus, okay, look, to play shadow advocate, it is possible that techs responsible for creating the virus use a modified version of an existing virus, like what the Chinese Communist Party do with the coronavirus, but that's just reading too much into the film given there was no forward point to this unholy thing. So, yeah. So, otherwise, but, I mean, it just doesn't make sense. I mean, why would some of the cast members be like naturally immune, not becoming zombies, but there's a flu-like virus going around that turns people into zombies, but this doesn't make sense. Anyway. Now, unlike most people, I have no problem with fast zombies. In fact, they're scary and pose more of a threat. And zombies are versatile. You can make them into anything. There's zombie soldiers, zombie cops, zombie assassins, you know, all sorts of zombies. So being fast it actually works. I mean, a slow-moving zombie you can probably deal with, but fast ones, even though you might not think it's a purist sort of thing, but it's actually scary. That's why the Dawn of the Dead remake was such a hit. Now. But the problem is, in this film, we have zombies spider walking on ceilings, for goodness sake. Just plain stupid. and the insanely fast conversion rate in infecting the zombies. They're literally like human one moment and a zombie the next. Just also biologically preposterous. Now the cast are mostly millennials, but they don't exactly prove adept at acting convincingly here. Although this is more of the fault of the pathetically slim material they are given, as the actors have been successful in future productions so far. Well, except for Nick Gannon, who is now a mediocre comedian trying to be edgy. Here he is annoying. Now the film also has a bad grasp of humour. When you have a fat-ass DJ, a normally good British actor making a bad attempt to play being the hard-nosed cynical type, saying he should not have taken a kumquat diet, then you know this is going to hurt your sense of humour the same as your logic processor. The film is fairly gory, but most of the gore is of the CGI variety, which kills the film's chances, especially the fact that the original film was one of the best practical effects gore zombie films ever made. If you want to see that, just watch the original Day of the Dead. It is available, and that is gory. Like awesome practical gore effects. That was Tom Savini's goriest work. Awesome. Okay, so as a result, we have one of the worst zombie films ever made in our hands. Now, the dreaded D- 1 out of 10 applies here. Atrocious crap from a zombie's ass. Now, for gore nudity. The gore is mostly CGI, but there are some practical gore effects used here as well, which, if nothing else, look pretty decent. I mean, those Eastern European guys are not exactly slouches when it comes to practical gore, but they just tend to use CGI a lot. In fact, there's actually some, I should mention there's that Steven Seagal zombie film, Against the Dark. I'll review that sometime in the coming year. And that's got some decent practical gore in it. That's actually probably the best thing about the film. Anyway, but there's no nudity here either. Now, about the DVD. This is released in Australian DVD by Force Entertainment, which, ironically enough, in its earlier incarnation of Force Video, released the original Day of the Dead on Australian DVD over here. And as such, it looks as good as it's going to get. The picture looks extremely good, but there's a bit of a color bleed with the red credits, and the soundtrack sounds decent enough. No subtitles, and the only supplement are a few preview trailers for other Force Entertainment releases. So that's what it looks like. The Australian DVD. Okay, that's it for that one. So Day of the Dead remake gets, well, 2008 remake gets a D-. It's just atrocious. But I mean, if you're a fan of the film, there are plenty of people out there who actually like this film. It's got like a 4 point something rating on IMDb, so there are plenty of people who like it. I'm not going to knock you for it, because if you enjoy it, that's fine. Good for you. But me personally, I found, because the original Day of the Dead was one of my favorite films, this one's just atrocious. Now, the second remake in 2017 called Day of the Dead Bloodline, that's, well, it's got a lower rating on IMDb, but it's actually a better film than this one. For one thing, it's actually more, because this remake doesn't actually, it's not very accurate to the original film. Like, it's just all the details are wrong. In the 2017 remake, they actually made some attempt to stick to the story of the original, but they deviated from it a little bit. It's actually more interesting, so I find that superior to this one. Anyway, and there's even a TV series in 2021, which, look, I don't watch zombie TV shows, to be honest. I prefer movies. I mean, The Walking Dead, I just have no interest in it. Not a bad thing, but just, I prefer movies. Anyway, I will review a few TV shows in the future, so keep an eye out for that. Okay, so Day of the Dead 2008 gets D-. 1 out of 10. It's atrocious. Yeah, but if you're a bad movie masochist, it's definitely one up your alley. Okay, I hope you guys are staying safe. It's less than half an hour before 2022 comes around. And my last reviews will be done in that year, but like within a few hours, so keep an eye out for that. Okay. I hope you guys are staying safe, enjoy yourselves, and see ya.